Good afternoon, everyone. Glad everybody that's here made it. I'm sure there'll be others drifting in. I know there's a lot of other committees that are doing work right now, and folks will be coming in as they get a chance to. But it's going to take a little bit to walk through the document, and we're going to walk through it as long as my voice holds out this afternoon. But before we get started, I'm going to ask Chairman Nimmer, if he will, to do an invocation for us.
All right, if you will, bow your heads and pray with me. Father God, we thank you for the day you've given us, the breath of life, just the ability to come in here and work on behalf of your people and your state. God, we ask for your for our cooperation to do your good work under your grace. Lord, we pray for peace, guidance. God, for those who have needs in this room, I pray that you would just touch and bless them. God, I'm sure in the room this side there are health and personal needs that are unspoken, and God, I pray that you would just allow those individuals to first do business with you. God, be with Mr. Terry as he presents the budget and give his voice the power to get through it. And we ask it all in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. All right. Yeah. I'm going to ask Vice Chairman Carson to conduct the meeting, and I'll walk through the document.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if you want to walk us through the budget, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate everybody that made it here this morning at 7 to enjoy the first of the subcommittee meetings. And appreciate everyone. In all seriousness, I do appreciate y'all being here for that. And in order to comply with House rules, we're doing this afternoon in order to give it time to be received at the clerk's office so we can have it on the floor on Friday. And starting out, it is a little bittersweet. We have two of our subcommittee chairs that are retiring after this year. First is Chairman Nimmer that gave our invocation there just a few minutes ago. And second, the longest serving elected Republican in the House of Representatives, Chairman Earhart. Chairman Earhart, we appreciate all that you've done, all that you've stood for, and for your hard work for all of Georgia's citizens, and especially Georgia's children. Thank you, sir. It was my freshman year as I stood here and asked for a bill that was not on the rules calendar one day in front of Chairman Earhart that I wished that the floor would open and swallow me whole. I soon learned the error of my ways, and he could have skewered me, but he treated me incredibly kindly that day, and I've never forgotten it. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your tracking sheet, we'll start with it. And I'm going to try to go through fairly quickly because I am a little bit concerned about my voice and whether or not it's going to hold out. But Georgia Senate, no changes there. You'll see some statewide changes like we always have, and you'll see one of those noted dealing with risk premiums under the House of Representatives. Moving on to general offices of the General Assembly, or the joint offices of the General Assembly. The GBA expenses are going to be going up a little bit, so the House has put its half in on line 3.1.4, and you'll see some of the other operating expenses at 3.2.2. The others are related to the risk insurance. Audits and accounts, you will also see some statewide spreads there dealing with merit system, teamworks, and a few of those type things as well. Court of Appeals, Chairman Welch and his subcommittee always dive deep and do a hard work there. And if you'll look at 5.1.6, they'd ask for one full-time central staff attorney. We've said to hold on for now. We'll review that again next year. And then at 5.1.10, you'll see some IT expenses that we actually funded in the amended 18 budget in cash as well there. Moving on to Judicial Council. Again, several statewide spreads. Under the JQC at 6.5.2, it reflects a reduction in operating expenses there. Just mirrors something we'd also done in the amended budget. Juvenile court, section 7. They were asking for one juvenile detention alternative initiative statewide coordinator position. They actually already have one that is funded with federal funds, so it was not necessary to put state funds in on that. Section 8, prosecuting attorneys. It's been the House position for several years that as we add assistant district attorneys, that we would also do the same thing on public defenders, whether it be in juvenile or adult court systems. And so you'll see an adjustment there at 8.2.5, and that'll show up as well in public defenders here in just a little bit. 8.2.7, the raises that were implemented, I think it was year before last or either last year, have not had a chance to fully go into effect, so we're waiting to see how those affect the retention efforts. 8.2.11, the new judgeship that was added in the Northeastern Judicial Circuit. You'll see the assistant district attorney position added there to go along with that judgeship. Superior courts, you'll see some more self-insurance spreads throughout it. At 9.3.6, you'll see a reduction there at the Cobb Circuit. There was actually a mistake made on their case count. They came back and told Chairman Welch and his committee that new judgeship was not earned, and so they were withdrawing that request. And then at 9.3.7, there was another ask for a law clerk position. We've just said not at this time. Supreme Court, 10.1.11. Again, dealing with some IT expenses. That was covered also in the amended budget in cash there, so it's not necessary in the big budget. No changes on the accounting office. No changes under Department of Administrative Services. And I'm hitting the House changes to the governor's recommendations, so I forgot to say that up front. I apologize for that. Going on to the Department of Ag, Section 13. You'll see a reduction at 13.1.2, and you're going to see this show up through several categories throughout the budget, but there were some changes in the health insurance cost that was not funded within the regents, and so we're going through and where it was funded in some other agencies, pulling that out as well. 13.2.6, annualizing 11 positions based on the staggered starting dates from last year. And then under marketing and promotion at 13.4, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, and 0.7, as we have worked through the last summer with the Rural Development Council, several things have come to light. And a lot of what has come to light is our lack of a cohesive effort on marketing rural Georgia and the opportunities that lie in rural Georgia. And of course, a lot of those opportunities center around agriculture. And so in talking to Commissioner Black and his folks over there, one of the things that we in Georgia have typically not done is put a whole lot of effort into ag marketing. What has been done has been pulled together bits and pieces, but we've not done a cohesive effort, and nothing along the same lines of those states surrounding us. Florida, South Carolina, and other states spend considerably more in ag marketing than we do in Georgia. And so we're standing up kind of a team effort here between Department of Ag, Board of Regents, and Economic Development. It's kind of a three-ring model that will all be linked and working together, and you see the ads for the Department of Ag program there under Marketing and Promotion. Moving on to Section 14, Banking and Finance, no changes. Next changes come in Behavioral Health, Section 15. 15.27, another one of the health insurance pieces tied to the Board of Regents, reduction there. Under Child and Adolescent Developmental Disabilities at 15.6.5, an ad for some capacity adding at the Matthew Reardon Autism Center in Savannah that helps take care of that southeast corner in partnership with the Marcus Autism Center and Emory here in Atlanta. just makes access for autism treatment and diagnoses easier for those folks down there that don't have to travel to Atlanta for that. Moving on, 15.8.10. The First Lady had the commission on the Children's Mental Health Initiative this last year. Several findings came out of that. One of those was supported employment and education assistance for young adults as they transition out of the system. And as Chair Lady Dempsey and her committee have worked on it, realizing it's going to take a little bit of time to get all of that stood up, there was initially 500 slots funded there from get-go on July 1st. And what we've done is just push that deadline back, or that startup date, to January 1. However, that does not preclude them from being able to go ahead and start individuals on July 1, but the full funding comes into effect at July 1 at 500 slots. The next piece at 15.8.11 ties in a little bit to that, but also ties in a lot to the child and adolescent mental health issues that we're seeing around our state and around the country as well. But this becomes an app that's on the phone, and it works through the Georgia Crisis Access Line that we stood up a couple of years ago. And it will help develop a basic chat, call, or text mobile app that kids that are disturbed for whatever reason, to be able to reach out to someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and reach someone here in Georgia. Currently, that is available, but it's available from 8 in the morning to 5 in the evening, and from 5 in the evening to 8 in the morning, it's someone out of state that doesn't know or understand necessarily our children here in Georgia. But this will put us a state-based system in place with a one-touch app, and I want to thank Chair Lady Dempsey for her heart and service on that, and it will pay dividends for many years to come for young people. Moving on to 15.12.2. From time to time, we do partnerships with some of our private schools around the state, and our friends over at Emmanuel College are rolling out a new agricultural college over there, and they've come asking for the state to help them with rolling out a summer careers camp for children with disabilities looking to go in the fields of agriculture. So we're going to work with them this year and see how well that goes, and we'll talk about it again in the future as well. Section 16, Department of Community Affairs. 16.2.2, as the audit was done on the regional commissions, most of y'all saw that and saw that the ARC, the Atlanta Regional Commission, came back with not too glowing a recommendation, or not too glowing report out of that. Some unacceptable expenses that have been charged there, and so what we're doing is doing a reduction there as it relates to the ARC. Under DCA, 16.3.6, you'll see an ad there of $130,000 for a staff attorney that will deal with downtown redevelopment. One of the things we heard with the RDC as we traveled the state was that a lot of small towns do not have the capability either in their cities or have the capability to go out and find someone to help them with redevelopment grants, and so that's what that's going to do. 16.10.2, we all were here last year as 2 tornadoes hit southwest Georgia and the Albany area, and we've had a partnership for several years with Second Harvest of South Georgia. They did the tornado food relief down there. However, the federal government did not reimburse them for some of the expenses that they had incurred, and so we had added a couple of years ago for a study to be done, that $25,000. We left it in last year because of the tornadoes, and have left it in again this year because they did not get fully reimbursed for some of the services they provided after those storms last year as well. Section 17, Department of Community Health. Under 17.17, just a small language change there, just saying as they develop the enterprise data solution that there will be portals available. So as we roll out the Rural Health Center, that there will be the ability for it to tie in to that system as well to analyze the data that's there, to allow hospitals in rural areas to be able to understand what the health issues are within their service areas. 17.115, dealing with pharmacy benefit managers and through the Department of Community Health. Our friends in Virginia had placed this language in their budget document last year, and it brought them back some pretty revealing information that they've been able to work with and make some changes as needed that have wound up saving the state a considerable sum of money going forward. So we're asking for the same study to be done here as well in Georgia. 17.4 under health access, healthcare access. 17.45, as we had included 4 FQHCs in the budget last year, just doing some accounting and taking that startup money out. But then at 17.46, going back in and adding 2 FQHCs, probably see the Senate come back and do something very similar as well. 17.47, I don't know how many of y'all have a dentist, but I do. And I know that he and others in our community go around the state doing volunteering for folks that don't have insurance or don't have access to dental care. And so what we're doing here is just helping them by putting a full-time coordinator position in place to help coordinate those free dental fairs. 17.48, in the amended budget, you'll remember that we put some startup funds there for the competitive bid process for the rural health center that we're establishing, just continuation of some of that, and then some startup funds for that center as well at 17.49. Moving on to Medicaid, ABD, 17.7. You'll see a slight true up at 17.71 for actuals. 17.74, last year, House Bill 206 was passed that would move the nursing home monthly allowance for nursing home residents up to $20. And what this is doing is taking it up to $15, and then either the Senate will hopefully add some additional, or we'll take and come back and try to get it on there next year as well. 17.711, a 2.5% rate increase for the adult day health centers. And then at 17.712, and you're going to see it again as well at 17.87. On Medicaid, if an individual shows up at the emergency room and once they're triaged, it's not deemed an emergency, hospitals are paid a flat rate of $50. And so that rate has not been changed since the 1990s, and what we're doing here is bumping it for urban hospitals $10 and for rural hospitals $20. And so again, you'll see that at 17.87 as well. 17.88, the Marcus Autism Center, of course, there have been some changes within the Medicaid autism codes. And so they're starting to see some significant cost increases as well. And so we're doing as much as we can on the ask that they had come forward with. And I think the ask was $1.2 million. We're trying to get them as close to it as we can there. 17.12 under physicians workforce, GME. Truing up of numbers on the primary care slots. There's actually 99 right now being used, so we've trued that number up. 17.12.2, coming on forward with some of the commitment we made a couple of years ago dealing with St. Joe's Candler down at Savannah on adding 2 rural surgical fellowships. 17.12.3, again, funding some new fellowships for Augusta University. 17.12.4, in the second year of the Gateway Behavioral Health Program in Savannah as well. We'll continue to do that another couple years until we're up to 24 slots there when it's fully ramped up. 17.12.5, adding to the Accelerated Medical Track Program for physicians in rural areas. And then at 17.12.6, carrying forward and annualizing the statewide residency recruitment fair that was recommended in the amended budget through the RDC as well, and just annualizing it there. Something that used to be there, used to be in the budget, and when we hit the recession a few years ago, it was one of the things that got cut. At 17.5.1, you'll see that actually moved up to 17.12.5 and consolidated it in the correct place. At 17.15.2, We have 9 counties in the state with no physician, period. We have 4 counties in the state with 1 physician. In those counties, if you are the only doctor, you are the specialist, you are the general practitioner, you are everything. And for those individuals, that means that usually their malpractice insurance is considerably higher because there is more of a risk, because they're having to try to diagnose things that they don't have the luxury of asking a specialist nearby to look at. And so as we worked through the RDC this past summer, one of the things that was brought to us was a way to help limit the liability for those sole practitioners and to try to pull some practitioners into those counties that do not have a doctor there. And one of those was helping with some relief for the malpractice insurance. And so that's what that'll be, is actually a grant program for those individuals that choose to practice there with extended hours. And of course, they all have to take Medicaid as well too. Under 1718.2, Georgia Drugs and Narcotics Agency, pay parity issue there for those agents. Those agents are actually pharmacists and post-certified. And so it has been quite a challenge to get some of those individuals hired or to keep them there working for work in concert with GBI and the Department of Community Health. Section 18, Department of Community Supervision. You'll see a small reduction at 1815. And then 1825, you'll see a reduction for the purchase of equipment at one-time funds in there. But there were also some funds for drug testing kits that, of course, cannot be reused, so we did need to lessen that cut that the governor's budget had recommended there. And then 1826 is just a transfer of 2 positions to the correct program, which you're going to see at 1844, where those positions are transferred to. Department of Corrections, Section 19. 1935, again, one-time funds for some purchase of software and materials. And we've just trued that up a little bit, lessened the cut, because some of the stuff in that line is consumables, and so those need to continue to be provided for. 1956, again dealing with the Regents Health Care. And then 1957, as the electronic health records within the Department of Corrections continues to roll out, we're still leaving about $7.8 million in the base for the operation of it. Under private prisons at 1971, as we raised our correctional officers' pay rates last year, it then started causing some disparity between the private prisons. And as we had asked them a couple of years to do, they have so graciously done and complied with, is going in and adding the educational programs that we have done in our facilities as well. So we wanted to come in and do what's right for those folks and their employees there. 19.8, there are some recurring licensing software fees, so we lessened the cut there that the governor had recommended. And then on 19.89, we eliminated some one-time funds that were done to fund some new startup of some vocational classes. Section 20, Department of Defense, no changes. Section 21, Driver Services. You'll see some of the statewide changes there, nothing other than those. Section 22, Decal. One of the things, again, that we heard through the RDC hearings were talking about birth to 5-year-old literacy and numeracy issues. And so what we're doing there is just emphasizing the point that we want that focused on under the child care services at Decal. Section 23, Economic Development. I mentioned a while ago a 3-ring composite model for agencies working together. Section 23.8, you'll see where the governor had announced this morning of the creation of a Deputy Commissioner for Rural Development. And so we have funded the Deputy Commissioner position, a Project Manager position, and some operating expenses as well. And again, that person, I've jokingly told that person that I want them to have a desk as a card table as a desk here in Atlanta, but I wanted their true desk to be a seat of a vehicle as they ride around the state and try to do what is best for rural Georgia. And I think that Amy takes us serious. She understands that, and we're tickled to death to be in partnership with the governor on this as well. 2310-3, there's been a recommendation of the elimination of some one-time funds there for the marker program under the Historical Society. We've come back in and took that cut to half, and I'm looking for the Senate to come forward and do something very similar. Section 24, Department of Education. 24.1.5 under Ag Education. We continue to see our young farmer programs around the state grow, and we've had a couple of requests there, one in Polk County and one at the Petula Charter Academy. And also, as that program has continued to grow as well, they're now in the need for a young farmer executive program director, and so we're giving the nod to that as well. Section 24.4 under Central Office. We have broken the Chief Turnaround Officer out into a separate program now, and so you'll see that $1 million cut actually goes back in at 24.6.2. And then also the add at 24.6.3 for the schools that are within the turnaround officer's purview to also bring forward with some soft skill education as well. Another thing that we heard consistently in every stop we made in the state this year with the RDC through employers and manufacturers saying that individuals just do not have the soft skills necessary. At 24.10.5, you'll see a true up under GNETs, and there are actually 200 less students there, so we're just capturing that savings. 24.13.3, again, a true up of the formula there. 24.13.5, recognizing 20 additional slots at Kids Peace, and it's a partnership with DHS and DJJ that Kids Peace works with some of those troubled individuals and young people there. Under preschool disabilities at 24.15.2, again, a true up of the formula. 24.16, that section is actually new. Several years ago, pupil transportation was broke out separately and it was rolled up into QBE. And so for transparency, we've come back and pulled that back out of QBE, and so it can be seen. And so we can make the adjustments and everybody can keep up with it. But at 24.16.3 is recognizing that there are new additional FTEs that school systems have brought on board. And at 24.16.4, you'll see $10 million in cash there for school buses. School buses used to be paid for in cash before the recession. We pulled it out and put those in bonds. And so now trying to get back to where we were and get school systems back to where they were as well, trying to go back to the old formula there. And then at 24.16.5, just encouraging school systems to use alternative fuel buses where practical. 24.18.1, again, an adjustment for the closing of 2 state commission charter schools. And then at 24.19.2, again, another true up. Actually was a fairly small number of students, only a 0.38% enrollment growth across our state. So as we get to 10.4 million people, it takes more and more to get to 1%. When I first got here, we were growing at 1 to 1.5 to 2% a year in student counts, but we were a lot smaller state population-wise at the time as well. 24.19.4, increasing funds actually instead of a cut. It was a true up on the formula for school nurses. Again, another adjustment for the closure of the 2 state commission charter schools at 24.19.5. Moving on down to 24.19.7, a true up in the payroll data on TRS for non-certificated employees. Then just asking for a survey of the number of counselors and school nurses and to be reported back to the General Assembly by September 1st of this year. Again, going forward at 24-19-9, recognizing the 20 additional slots at kids piece. And then at 24-19-10 is where the reduction is made that then gets put back into pupil transportation as the new program. At 24-20.3, I mentioned the app earlier that Chair Lady Dempsey had been working on, and Chairman Dickey has worked with her on that as well. But it's this ad here under our RESAs also goes into our PBS system, the Positive Behavioral Intervention System around the state. But what these funds would do is help educate not only school system employees, but community leaders and law enforcement around our state and communities to help them realize when a student is having an issue and how better to relate to that individual and keep a bad outcome from happening. Under state schools at 24-23-6, you'll see the ad of a mobile audiology clinic, and that will primarily be for use in rural Georgia as well, as systems in metro areas often have access to resources that smaller school systems around the state don't have. We're finding that many kids may be up to 8 or 9 years old before it's realized that they may have a hearing problem, and so this helps identify those to keep those kids from falling too far behind. 24-25.5 under testing, you'll see a reduction as we have rolled back some of the testing requirements in the state. We're starting to realize some savings there as well. Section 25 under ERS, you'll see at 25.4.2 where we're asking the ERS board to issue the 13th check like we've done for the last couple of years to our state retirees that have not seen a COLA. And so just recognizing there that they should have that ability to do that. State Forestry Commission, no changes. Governor's Office, if you'll flow through to Governor's Office of Student Achievement at 27.7, at 27.7.6 and 27.7.7. At 7.6, you're going to see the annualizing of the 2 free AP exams for low-income students, one in STEM and one in a non-STEM area that's being recognized there, an addition of $750,000. And at 27.7.7, again, just reemphasizing the point of the literacy and numeracy for the birth through 5-year age group. Under Human Services, Section 28, under Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention at 28.3.3, these are for our child advocacy centers across the state. A $10,000 additional stipend for each of those at $490,000. Y'all all, I am sure, realize the importance that they play in all of our communities, and so they have come asking for some additional help as things have changed with federal funding, and of course expenses in general have increased as well. We're wanting to try to help them as much as we can also. At 26.6.7, you'll see a reduction for the one-time funds for some of the mobile technologies that were used for the panic button for case managers. Those have all been put in place, so that one-time funding is no longer needed. Under Departmental Administration at 28.8.6, dealing with nursing homes, and again, that personal needs allowance I mentioned earlier, and again, taking that from $10 up to $15 there for those individuals. 28.14 out-of-home care, reducing funding for the Families First Coaches program. Our initial report has shown that the results there were not what were anticipated, so we're making a reduction there. And then on our relative foster care rates and the increase for child placement agencies, taking the bump that we started with last year, the governor put in $2.50. We've added an additional $1.25 to take it up to $3.75. The goal has been to get them up to $10 total. We did $5 last year and trying to get back to $5 again this year as well there. Under Family Connection at 28.20, Family Connection, as we went into the recession, back several years ago. Each county's allocation had been $50,000, and we'd trimmed that back considerably, and so we now have them back to the pre-recession funding level for those agencies as well. Under voc rehab at 28.25.4, IPSI program, and we're just saying yes to the language item there of utilizing $500,000 in existing state funds. 28.25.5, eliminating the funding for the Warrior Alliance, something that never got off the ground last year that we'd put in, so we're just taking the funding out there. At 28.25.6, providing a state hub in southwest Georgia to deal with 14 counties on individuals that are trying to live independently that have some type of disability as well. Much easier on them, much cheaper on us as a state if they can maintain residence in their home instead of having to be in a nursing home situation. Office of Insurance, 4 different items here that are all connected. 29.1.5, 29.1.6, 29.3.3, and 29.5.3 are all, it's revenue neutral, but it's just realignment within program areas there. So that's all the changes there. No additional new funds. Section 30 GBI, you'll see several of the statewide changes dealing with teamworks there. At 30.3.4, the annualization of the funds for the 4 scientists and 2 lab technicians dealing with the sexual assault kits and the backlog there per Senate Bill 304. We took a small reduction because we had forward funded those additional kits that were needed that were included in this number. We went ahead and funded those in the amended budget. And then at 30.3.5, when you have a morgue, it does require cleaning from time to time. And so we're adding some additional funds there for the morgue expansion and the janitorial services related to it going forward. One thing I think we would all agree on, you want to have a clean morgue. But don't bump. Psh. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time. Moving on, juvenile justice. 31.1.5. Just a small adjustment there. Initially, this had been funded for 9 beds being occupied 365 days a year. As we looked at it, realized that all 9 beds would not be occupied year-round. If we need to do an adjustment, we can always do that adjustment as we come back in the amended budget. 31.3.5, again, the Regents insurance issue. And again at 31.4.7. Department of Labor. Chairman Nimmer and his committee have been working with Commissioner Butler at 32.4.2. As the good thing is our unemployment rate is very low in the state. The bad thing is when the unemployment rate becomes very low, the federal funds that come from unemployment services also go away as well. But that overall is a good thing because that means that more Georgians have good paying jobs and are at work. And so what we're asking the commissioner to do within his agency is work with other local entities in making sure the services are still available to individuals and to businesses as they need interaction with the Department of Labor. And then at 32.4.3, realizing and recognizing that there may be some offices that need to be shut down or that he has to look at shutting down that we're willing to take and come back and say we want to keep open, again, for the convenience for businesses and for individuals as well. Section 33, Department of Law, 33.1.6, just providing 2 paralegals. I think the request was actually 3. The governor had provided 1. We're coming back in and saying we'll do 2. Section 34, DNR. After 2 back-to-back hurricanes on the coast, it does fall to the state as a responsibility to clean up our coastline. And the coastal delegation approached us back early on about some help in funding some of that hurricane debris removal and removal of some sunken vessels. So we're trying to help them with that as well. At 34.7.5, an add of $250,000 for some park facility improvements. I believe it's at George L. Smith where there's some ADA compliance issues and trying to make sure that we are compliant there as well. Section 35, pardons and paroles, no changes. Section 36, state properties, no changes. Public Defenders Council, Chairman Bulldog Welch, of course, as y'all, we got another nickname for another subcommittee chair here. One of our newer ones, Chairman Shaw, that chairs our transportation subcommittee. If y'all just refer to him as Tater Chip sometime, and he'll explain to you. Y'all, if we don't have a little bit of fun and laugh every once in a while, we'll all go crazy. But anyway, under public defenders at 37.2.6, as I mentioned earlier, Chairman Welch and his subcommittee have been trying to keep parity between the prosecuting attorneys and the public defenders. And so you'll see an ad there that helps keep those pay scales equal. And at 37.2.7, the addition of 9 juvenile public defenders as well. Moving on to Department of Public Health. 38.1.4, there were some one-time funds put in last year for the maternal mortality study. That has now been completed, and one of the recommendations coming out of that is seen at 38.1.5 in helping to address maternal mortality. Georgia, believe it or not, we're the 8th most populous state in the country, but yet you would think that would mean that we do a good job on a lot of things, but unfortunately, one of the things we do a very poor job on is seeing to a lot of our mothers once they've had their child, and we lead the nation, believe it or not, in maternal deaths post-childbirth. And so the study had recommended doing some grants to hospitals for implementation of maternal hemorrhaging and hypertension patient safety bundles, data collection, and hospital planning. So that's what you'll see that $2 million being used for. 38.1.6, a request there. We're actually doing 3 of the 6 requested sites for the sickle cell program under Cancer Coalition. 38.1.7, again doing part of the portion of the ask there at $887,500. And at 38.1.5, Subcommittee Chair Tater Chip Shaw has had, and I agree with him, diabetes is a very serious issue. I don't know how many of y'all struggle with it, but I do as a type 2 diabetic, and it's not something that's fun to deal with. And the best thing is prevention and early diagnosis there, and so that's what that'll help with. Still within public health, at 38.4.3, again, one of the things we heard out of the RDC travels this year was the lack of training for EMS personnel around the state. We used to have that in place. Again, as the recession hit, those funds were taken up, are taken back and not used anymore. What we're doing is re-implementing that, and you'll see again in a few minutes how we're proposing to pay for that as well. Under infant and child essential health treatment services, 38.7.5, that is actually just a move of a contract so that both contracts will be in the same place. That contract is actually being moved from 38.11.1. So it's no new funds, but just an alignment of contracts there. 38.7.6, Babies Can't Wait. Some additional funding to catch up to the Medicaid rates. And then an adjustment at 38.7.7 for the change in the FMAP rate on the federal level. 38.9.3, Grady has been doing some incredible work on HIV and AIDS. And so what this is doing is to help them along that lines. And at 38.9.4, again, dealing with hepatitis C surveillance and linkage to care and testing. As you know, hepatitis C is an issue that for whatever reason is increasing around our state. Part of it has to do with the opioid epidemic. But what we're needing to do is keep a better eye on those individuals because there is a treatment thankfully now, for chronic hepatitis, but it is incredibly expensive as well, as many of you know. So under 38.15.3, I'd mentioned the 10 regional trainers for EMS. Of course, the funding for the Trauma Care Network comes through the super speeder fines. Those fines have continued, that revenue has continued to increase, and so we're just saying there to use those funds, some of those funds for those 10 EMS trainers around the state. Public safety at 39.4.4, just a true up of actual expense there. There was already some money in the base that was not recognized initially, so we're truing that up. 39.6.5, again eliminating some one-time funds that were used for vehicles and equipment for some compliance managers. 39.8.6, eliminating the one-time funds for the laptops and projectors for the 12 CIT positions that are out there. They're out in the field running, but one computer will last them for a little while. No need to buy them another one this year. I don't know what they would do with two, and they'd probably rather not have the one that they have to keep up with. But anyway, I know I don't like to keep up with mine. Under Public Service Commission, y'all can laugh every once in a while. 40.1.5, you'll see an ad there as Chairlady Houston and her committee were talking to the PSC and beginning to realize that many of their long-term employees, their specialists, are getting ready to retire. As a matter of fact, about 33% of their staff is actually eligible to retire in the next 3 years. There is a need to transfer the knowledge that those individuals have on to the next generation of individuals. So what we're doing there is allowing them to bring in an attorney position and an engineer position to help with that training, or that cross-training and forward training. Section 41, Board of Regents. As we continue to grow as a state, and the state's largest industry continues to grow, agriculture, of course, at about a $75 to $78 billion impact to our state, it is necessary to remain on the leading edge of research. And the University of Georgia, through our Cooperative Extension Service and the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, has remained on the cutting edge on peanut breeding and a lot of our different crop breedings. But unfortunately, as we see storms like the hurricanes that came through last year and the year before, we do have new insects and diseases that are introduced that are picked up in South America and out of the Caribbean that do start having an impact on many of our crops. And so what we're doing here is adding positions under Ag Experiment Station and under Cooperative Extension, dealing with researchers, and also at 41.3.2, adding 6 additional 4-H and agriculture and natural resource agents across the state that work with our young people. 41.5.2, that's actually under the Forestry Cooperative Extension Service. At 41.5.2, you'll see some funds for some building maintenance that needs to be done at Whitehall Forest there in Athens, and also the funds for demolition of some surplus buildings that are very high cost buildings to keep them in a safe condition, but they're no longer needed, so they need to be eliminated, so we're not continuing to spend money there. At 41.8.1, just an actual small adjustment on the new cyber center for the M&O request there. Under 41.16.2, small increase for the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers, is that is now based at Kennesaw State University. I think it's been there about 4 years, Chairman Earhart. And that group of individuals go out and train teachers across this state as it comes to hands-on applied science, and so that's what they're doing there, and have done incredible work. At 41.16.3, one of the keystone recommendations coming out of the RDC was to create a Center for Rural Prosperity and Innovations, and we'll be housing it at an academic institution, and so that's what we're doing there, is providing funds for that. 41.18.2, again, as the Skidaway Institute down outside of Savannah continues to grow in popularity with students and with the need that's needed for researchers to be trained, just a small addition there to help fund some of the work that is done there by the students. You'll see one small adjustment dealing with that insurance issue at 41.19.2, but at 41.19.6, as the consolidation of ABAC and Bainbridge State College have gone into effect, much of the property at Bainbridge State College has transferred over to TCSG, and so that's a transfer of that operating or the M&O money, or excuse me, not M&O, but the teaching money for that campus moving over to TCSG. And then at 41.19.7, this is something that's near and dear to not only Chairman Earhart's heart and the speaker's heart, dealing with SPIA, the School for Public and International Affairs, and allowing for more learning opportunities for those students there to allow them to get out and understand better what we do, not only what we do, but what Congress and other forms of government do across the state. And Chairman Earhart has worked with Regents and the University of Georgia to make sure that that happens, just telling them to use existing funds there. 41.2.0, at 20.3, you'll see an addition of a clinical services veterinarian to continue doing research on avian influenza. We have been very blessed in Georgia not to have been hit, except for one small instance last year with avian influenza in our poultry industry. And a lot of that credit goes to these individuals that have been doing the research and making sure that we do the sanitary practices within the industry that are necessary. And so as you look at 41.20.4 M&O for the Poultry Diagnostic Research Center, and then at 41.2.5, as the beef cattle industry continues to grow here in the state, as well as the swine industry is back on an upswing, there is a need for a food animal medicine haul-in facility to be constructed at Tifton, and that's what that provides for. A lab tech position at 4120.6 at the Tifton Vet Lab. And then you'll see under Georgia Military College, you've probably heard from, many of you have probably heard from those folks down there. As the changes were made on the required contribution for TRS, for whatever reason, their teachers had been left out of that system. Those teachers are actually state employees, just like any other school system teacher are. And so what we're doing there is truing up that to the actual cost for them as well. Department of Revenue. At your first changes you're going to see under motor vehicle. The first three there are some of the statewide changes, but as you go to 42.6.6, Chairman Nimmer, that operates the mechanical tree huggers, I think is what Chairman McCall said from the well the other day. I told Chairman McCall after he made that comment, I'd gotten a call from someone in Elbert County saying that he'd done become cityfied, calling a feller buncher a mechanical tree hugger. But anyway, as you'd seen in the amended budget, as the counties are going to be converting over and the Department of Revenue are converting over to the drive system, the biggest issue we found, as Chairman Nimmer has dug in hard and worked hard on this, trying to work with ACCG and others to find out what the true issues are, it comes down to connectivity. One of the things, again, we'd heard through the RDC hearings this summer was that internet accessibility around the state is fleeting at best in some areas. Well, believe it or not, it happens to be at about 40 to 45 courthouses around the state that there's not broadband capability there. And so what we're doing is trying to help some of those entities out there as well. And so as you look at 42.6.7, that's some additional funds moved up. It's split out from 42.8.4 under revenue processing. And then the balance from that 2.1 change there and the 1.225 then goes into taxpayer services at 4211.5. And what they're doing there, again, it's a program, internal program transfer, but as they continue to do a better job in understanding fraudulent claims, it does take more people to make sure that the right individuals are actually getting their refunds at the end of the year as they file. Secretary of State, no changes. Student Finance Commission, dual enrollment has been incredibly successful, as you all know. And what we've done is realizing that there is a need after we've gotten an audit back on the program this year, realizing that there is a need to actually cap the credit hours that a student can receive. And so we're telling them to cap that at 15 credit hours and make a little bit of a change in how the teachers are qualified as well. And so that allowed us to make a cut there. And at 44.1.4, eliminating the transportation grant that was not well used, but if you'll remember, back in pupil transportation, we've more than made up for a $500,000 cut. And the ads there under pupil transportation under DOE actually go to every school system across the state. Under student finance, continuing on under low interest loans, and what we're just saying there is to continue to make more loans based on the overage on interest that they have. They use some of the interest revenue for their administrative costs, but we're just telling them that if you've got additional funds there, it is quite all right to go on and make more loans. And then at 44.15.1, Majority Whip Coomer had asked that there be an increase in the service council loans for the Georgia National Guard, and so that's what we're telling them to do there as well. TRS Section 45, no changes. Section 46, Technical College System of Georgia. Y'all give me a second to get a drink of water. At 46.1.6, if you remember in the amended budget, we had provided some funds there on the Career Center that was being shut down by labor at Cedartown. And what we're actually doing is transferring that center over to TCSG to operate and help individuals in the transition from the technical college system actually into the workforce. At 46.3.2, you'll see a truing up of some numbers based on the workforce investment dollars that come into the state. Of course, that program has been moved into TCSG as well. And at 46.3.3, just seeing use about $2 million of that to work toward the Governor's Defense Initiative. And that will allow some of those funds to be used for that defense initiative as we work to keep our military bases and those jobs within our state. Under technical education at 46.5.6, I mentioned the cut over in Regents for the Bainbridge State College campus teaching program, moving over to TCSG, and that's where it comes back into there. Section 47, transportation. Chairman Tater Chip Shaw has one small language add there at 47.6.7, and just saying to utilize existing fund for airport aid, but excluding projects in Dawson County. There is some community disagreement up there right now, and the last thing we want to do as a state is come in and add to that disagreement. At 48.3.2 under Veterans Services, again dealing with the health insurance through the Board of Regents, just eliminating that as well. State Board of Workmen's Comp, Section 49, no changes. And then the pages that everybody's been wanting to look at are in Section 50. I'm gonna make note of one item in Section 50 that, as we saw the unfortunate events play out in Florida a couple of weeks ago now, and realizing that our school children in many cases are protected by those that surround them. Sometimes the buildings may actually let them down a little bit and allowing too easy a passage for individuals that intend to do harm. And so what we're doing is adding $8 million into the bond package that will go out to school systems through a grant program. And that grant program will go out. There'll be a base grant for every school system in the state, And then on top of that, based on the student count within those systems, there will be additional funds also earned. We're looking for the Senate to come in their bond package to add to that. Our estimated cost is somewhere about $16 million. We have funded $8 million of that, and hoping that the Senate agrees with us on this package and look at our young people again as a priority as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, that finishes up my comments and walking through, and I'll be glad to answer as many questions as my voice holds out for. Or if I put you to sleep. Just a couple other comments. This will be posting online today. Please hang on to these copies that you have for Rules Committee. When Rules Committee meets on Friday, we'll be asking to go on the supplemental calendar for Friday, and the bills will be going on the desk. So if you take your copy from your desk, please keep up with that copy, because it is expensive, as you can imagine, to print this many pages. We'll have plenty of time to review. Y'all will have plenty of time to review. If you got any further questions over the next day and a half, let me or let our staff know, and we'll be glad to answer those as you have them.
Okay, you have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hawkins? Chairman Tatership. Chip. No? What about 89? Okay, I don't see any questions, Mr. Chairman.
That's highly technical equipment. I know you're not really used to that over there, so.
I'm trying to work with you.
Okay, all right.
I don't see any questions. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes the rules, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we are adjourned.